So welcome to the second past paper run through. Remember that I won't be going through the 6-mark questions in this run through because they're a bit too complicated and long, so make sure you collect the 6-mark question mark scheme from the teacher as you leave the room, along with your next paper for next week. As ever, there is an equation sheet in this paper, so make sure you always go to this equation sheet if you've got numbers in the question you're not sure what to do, because it's very likely that the equation that you need to use is here, and then it becomes very easy from there, usually the question. So, first question says, the graph shows the average height gained per year by girls and boys at different ages. And it says, use the graph to answer these questions. At what age do girls start adolescence? So, adolescence is shown by this graph from where there's a growth spurt, if you like. And so you need to do it from where they start this growth spurt. So you can see that girls start the growth spurt around here. So any answer between 9 and 10 years is fine, because that's when it starts to increase. And then it says, at what age do boys grow at their fastest rate? So boys grow at their fastest rate at the very beginning of their life, if you like, here, because that's where they're gaining 14 centimetres per year, whereas that decreases and never reaches that height again. So any answer between 0 and 1 would get you the mark here. It says, at what age is there the greatest difference in the rate of growth between girls and boys? So the greatest difference you'll see is here. So where boys have a peak and the girls are quite low. So that's around 13.5. And it says, how can you tell us from the graph? And that's because of the greatest distance between the two lines. So you get 1 mark for 13.5 here, and here by saying there's a greatest distance or height between the two lines. You could have had any answer between 13 and 14 here to get the mark. Next question says, girls and boys grow by their cells dividing. What is the name of this type of cell division? So that is mitosis. And the next question says, just before cells divide, DNA replication occurs. Describe how DNA replication occurs. You may use labeled diagrams to help your answer. So the first mark is for saying that the DNA unzips. So unzips is an important word there. And then the second mark is saying that then it adds the bases. You could also say that adds nucleotides, or you could say that A pairs with T and C pairs with G. So first mark is saying that DNA unzips, second mark is saying that the bases add together. Sorry, there are 3 marks here. So the third mark is for making sure that you are clear it's the complementary base pairs that pair together. So 1 mark for saying the DNA unzips, and then 2 more marks are saying that the complementary base pairs add together. But if you just said the bases add together, that's only 1 more mark, and you get 2 out of 3. So next question. Jo runs in the 100 metres race at school. At the end of the race she sits down but is still breathing much more quickly than she normally does. Explain why she needs to keep breathing much more quickly than normal. 3 marks. So first mark was talking about the fact that she used anaerobic respiration, or she couldn't get enough oxygen. Second mark was saying that therefore there's a production of lactic acid, and therefore we need extra oxygen to break down that lactic acid for the third mark. So first mark, she used anaerobic respiration, which second mark produced lactic acid, and third mark we need extra oxygen to break down that lactic acid. If you talk about oxygen debt, that doesn't get you a mark. Next question. Joe's friend Sam does not take part in the race. This is because he has a hole in the heart. This means that some blood moves straight from the right-hand side of his heart to the left. Explain why a hole in the heart would make it difficult for Sam to run the race. So again, there's 3 marks here. You could say that some blood bypasses the lungs, or you could say oxygenated and deoxygenated blood mix for the first mark. You could also talk about there being a lack of blood to the lungs or less blood to the lungs. That would all get you a mark. The next mark was saying there's not enough or less oxygen in the blood, or not enough or less oxygen is supplied to the muscles. You could have a mark for saying there's just a lack of oxygen in the blood there. And the last mark was saying that therefore less respiration occurs, or less energy is there. There's less energy for the muscles. Next question. The following article appeared in a newspaper. It says, in 2001, scientists in Texas cloned a pet cat, Rainbow, producing a kitten they called Copycat. Copycat was the only surviving animal of 87 embryos that were created using the same cloning technique that had been used to produce Dolly the sheep. Complete the flowchart to show how Copycat was produced. So we start with body cell from Rainbow and an egg cell from another cat. Remove the nucleus from body cell, remove nucleus from egg cell. The next part here, you need to say that the nucleus from Rainbow or the body cell was put into the empty egg cell. So the nucleus from the body cell was put into the egg cell. And then this one is that the cell is given an electric shock. Or you could say that the cell starts dividing. Next question says, the scientists could not just use a body cell from Rainbow and make that grow into an embryo. Why can a body cell not grow into an embryo? And this is the idea that the body cells lose the ability to differentiate. So if you talk about the ability to differentiate, you get the mark there and saying that body cells lose that ability. Or you could say that some of the genes may be switched off. You could also get a mark for just saying that it's not a stem cell. And that's it. So next section is the chemistry section. It says, antacid tablets are used to stop indigestion. Antacid tablets contain calcium carbonate, CaCO3, and it says Jenny and Gary investigate the reaction of antacid tablets to hydrochloric acid, calcium chloride, and water and carbon dioxide are made, and write a balanced symbol equation. So, with equations, always start with your arrow in the middle, and you've got to write the products of what is made on the right-hand side. So it tells you that calcium chloride, water, and carbon dioxide are made. So it's given you the symbol for calcium chloride, because they don't expect you to know that. And then you should know water, that's H2O, and you're expected to know carbon dioxide as well, that's CO2. And then it says calcium carbonate is reacting with hydrochloric acid. So calcium carbonate is CaCO3. Hydrochloric acid is HCl. Again, they don't give you that one. You're expected to know it. So that's one mark for just writing all those out. And then to balance it, for the second mark, you just need 2 HCl. Next question says, look at the diagram. It shows the apparatus they use. Jenny and Gary react an antacid tablet with 100 centimetres cubed of hydrochloric acid, and there's a graph to show the results. How long does it take for the reaction to stop? So anything between 5.5 and 6 minutes to get you the mark there, but not below 5.5 or above 6 minutes. Calculate the average rate of this reaction during the first 2 minutes of the experiment. And you have to give the unit as well. So you get 1 mark for saying it's 15, and the unit is centimetres cubed per minute, because you're dividing the volume in centimetres cubed by the time, which is in minutes. If you decided to change the minutes into seconds, you could have 0.25 for this, and then centimetres per second for this. The next question says, the rate of reaction for the first 2 minutes is different to the rate of reaction between 2 and 4 minutes. Describe how. And there you just have to put that the rate of reaction for the first 2 minutes is greater than the rate of reaction between 2 and 4. Or you could say that the rate of reaction between 2 and 4 is slower than the rate of reaction for the first 2 minutes. But basically you must make sure you compare the 2 rates of reactions to get the mark there. And the 6 mark question I'm going to leave, as I said at the beginning of the video, you can get the answer to that from the teacher. Next question is about fertilisers. It says ammonium sulfate is used as a fertiliser. Ammonium sulfate is made by reacting ammonia with dilute sulfuric acid. The ammonia needed for this reaction is made in a continuous process. This is different to the batch process used to make most medicines. A continuous process is used to make ammonia, but a batch process is used to make most medicines. Explain why. So the first mark you could say is that ammonia is needed in large amounts, or ammonia is in high demand, or you could say ammonia is needed all year round. The second mark you could say that the demand for a drug may be seasonal, or drugs are made on a relatively small scale, or if you use a batch process it would be easy to switch between making different drugs, or drugs are only needed in small amounts. So any of those will get you the second mark. It says it is more expensive to make medicines than it is to make ammonium sulfate fertiliser. Suggest why. So any one of these, you could say that making drugs is more labour intensive. You could say you need more specialised or qualified workers to make a drug. You could say that there's less automation possible in making drugs. You could say more research and testing is needed. You could say that the raw materials may be rare or expensive because you have to extract them from plants. You could talk about the legal demands. So any one of those would get you the mark there. And then percentage yield question says Alex makes some ammonium sulfate in a lab. Alex predicts he should make 8 grams of ammonium sulfate, he actually makes 6. Show by calculation the percentage yield is 75%. So percentage yield is the actual yield divided by the predicted yield over times 100, sorry. So this is going to be 6 divided by 8 times 100, which equals 75%. Now you need to make sure you write out your working for this question because they give you the answer already. Next question says, the companies who make ammonium sulfate fertiliser on an industrial scale want as high a percentage yield as possible. Explain why. So there's 2 marks here. You get 1 mark saying to reduce wasting reactants, and you need to make sure that the word reactants is in that answer to get that mark. So to reduce wasting reactants, and then you could also say to reduce costs, or to make more money, or to make more profit. And you could also say that it saves wasting energy. You can't say to reduce costs or to make more money or to make more profit without saying to reduce wasting reactants. So you must make sure to reduce wasting reactants is your first point to get any of the other points. Next question. Stephanie is investigating some liquid fuels. Stephanie investigates the energy given out by 3 different fuels. Look at the diagram. That's the apparatus she uses. It says, look at the table, it shows the results. Write down how Stephanie made her experiment of fair tests. So any one of these. So you could say same mass or volume or water, or same amount of water. You could say the same distance between the burner and the copper can. You could say use the same burner every time. You could say use the same copper can every time. You could say the same size flame or wick. So any one of those get the 1 mark. And the next question says, write down how Stephanie could increase confidence in results. And that's all about repeating the experiment. You could also say you could compare the results from other students. So fair test is all about the experimental method, and then increasing confidence is all about reliability, so that's repeating the experiment to make sure you get the same answer each time. It says, look at the results for paraffin. 0.6 grams of paraffin was used to heat 100 grams of water. Calculate the energy transfer per gram of paraffin. Use this equation. It says the specific heat capacity is 4.2. Give your answer to 3 significant figures. So first put the numbers into the equation. So energy will equal the mass. Now the mass is of water, not of the paraffin. And that's the main mistake people make. So it's 100 times 4.2 for the specific heat capacity times the temperature change, which is 25. And that gives you 10,500 if you times those together. And then to work out per gram, you do 10,500 divided by the amount burnt, which is 0.6. And that gives you 17,500. So that is your answer here, 17,500. Stephanie decides to use paraffin in a camping stove, even though it is slightly more expensive per gram than ethanol or petrol. Is this a sensible choice? Use only data in the table to explain your answer. So, to get the marks here, you've got to calculate the energy per gram for ethanol or petrol. And then once you've done that, you need to say that paraffin transfers more than twice the energy transferred by petrol or ethanol, but it's only slightly more expensive. So first you've got to work out the energy per gram of ethanol or petrol, and then make the point that paraffin transfers twice as much energy, but is only a little bit more expensive, so therefore is a better choice. So, last section is the physics section. It says Dave and Fred are discussing issues about road safety. Look at the graph, it shows data about the risks to road users. So the graph shows number of pedestrian or cyclist deaths for each car occupant death and the year. As you see, it's decreasing. And it says, Dave thinks that these data show that cycling has become safer since 1970 and that fewer cyclists die in accidents. Explain how the graph partly supports Dave's view. So it's only 1 mark. You can either say that fewer cyclists are killed compared to car occupants, or you could say that the fewer cyclists killed compared to previous years. Or you could say the ratio, the proportion is going down. And it says Fred is less confident about what the data shows and feels he needs more information. Suggest what other information about the data Fred needs to be more convinced. So any 2 of these get the 2 marks. You say that the data does not distinguish between pedestrians and cyclists. So it has total there. So all of them could be pedestrians for all we know. It says total numbers of deaths for cars are not shown. So comparing it to cars is not there. You could get a mark for saying the total number of deaths for pedestrians is not shown, or a mark for saying total number of deaths for cyclists is not shown. So any two of those four things get you the marks. Next question says, cars and their occupants have momentum when moving. Seatbelts stretch in a crash. It says, use these ideas to explain how seatbelts reduce injury in a crash. So any two from these points, you could say that it takes a longer time to stop for one mark, therefore less acceleration for a mark, and therefore less force produced for a mark. You could also talk about the lower rate of change for momentum for 2 marks. Next question says, the police take measurements after some road accidents. They can measure the braking distance by measuring the length of the skid marks on the road. This can give them an estimate of the original speed of the vehicles. Look at the graph of a car stopping. There it is. So the car takes 5 seconds to brake and the skid mark is 75 metres long. Calculate the original speed of the vehicle using this distance. So it takes a little bit of maths to work this one out. So it tells you the braking distance is this area in this triangle. So using the question, that is 75. It says that 5 seconds is the time it takes to brake. So this here is 5. So what you're trying to work out is this part of, this distance here. So we know to work out the area of a triangle, it's going to be this times this divided by 2. So we know that 5 times x divided by 2 equals 75. So if we rearrange that, we get 5x equals 75 times 2, which is 150. So therefore, x equals 150 divided by 5, which equals 30. So 30 metres per second is your answer. Next question says the speed limit is 32 metres per second. The police are not sure if the driver was travelling at a higher speed than the speed limit. So suggest why the skid mark may not give an accurate estimate of the original speed of the driver. So there's 2 marks for this. So you could say that the braking may not always leave a skid mark. You could say that tread of the tyre may affect skidding, or it may have been a wet, icy or slippy road. You could say that the weight or the load in the car would affect the length of the skid mark. And you can also say the length of a skid mark is not the same as the braking distance. Next question says, police know that braking distances are related to speed. This is because kinetic energy is transferred in braking. Look at the diagram. Car A and Car B are travelling at the same speed. Car A has double the mass of Car B. Compare the amount of kinetic energy of Car A and Car B. So remember that kinetic energy doubles because mass is doubled. So all you have to put here is it doubles. And then what happens to the kinetic energy of car A when its speed is doubled? Remember, when we double the speed, the kinetic energy quadruples. So to get the mark here, you have to put quadruples. What happens to the braking distance when the speed is doubled? Again, the braking distance quadruples as well. So to get this mark here, just put quadruples there. Next question says, Alex is a skydiver. He jumps out of an aeroplane and skydives before opening his parachute. Look at the graph of Alex's speed as he falls. As he falls, there are 2 forces acting on Alex, weight and drag. In part A of his graph, his speed increases. Explain why. And all you got to put there is the fact that the drag is less than the weight. You could also say that air resistance is less than weight, or friction is less than weight. But just the idea that that upward force is less than the downward force. Part C of the graph shows Alex travelling at terminal speed before his parachute opens. Explain why terminal speed is reached, and that is due to the fact that drag equals weight. So that's all you had to put for that. Or you could say the upward and downward forces are balanced. You could also say that there's no resultant force if you wanted to. In part D, the parachute opens and the speed reduces very quickly. Explain why. And again, you need to be comparing drag and weight. So the drag is much greater than the weight, or we could say the upward force is much greater than the downward force. But you don't get a mark for just saying the forces are unbalanced. You have to say, talk about the fact that it's much greater, the upward force than the downward force. Next question, part E of the graph shows the terminal speed after the parachute opens. Explain why the open parachute causes Alex to have a lower terminal speed than part C of the graph. 2 marks here. So any 2 of these, you could say that the larger surface area means there's more drag. You could say the surface area to weight ratio has increased. You could say that the drag equals the weight but at a lower speed. As speed reduces, drag. You could say that as speed reduces, drag reduces until it equals the weight. For 2 marks, you could put that larger area parachute has drag equals weight at a lower speed, something like that. You could also say something like the forces are balanced at a lower speed as well for a mark. And then finally, the parachute is used again. This time it is used with a much heavier person. His fall is different to Alex's. Part A of the graph is at higher speed. Explain why. And here you've just got to put that more drag is needed to balance the higher weight for a mark. And then the drag needed for balance is reached at a higher speed for the second mark. You could also say that the heavier person will need a larger air resistance for a mark. So that's the end of that paper. So make sure you collect the 6 mark question answers from your teacher as you leave, and also the next paper.